how did Nina Simone and her music enter your life?
Okay, so I grew up in the Detroit suburbs. I was born in 1969, so I missed the 1967 uprisings that had happened. And
Mhm.
of course, at that point, she was already heavily involved in the civil rights movement.
Yes.
Unfortunately, as a white girl living in the suburbs, I really did not have any exposure to her.
Mm.
Our local world was really built around Motown.
Yeah.
And so with that meant that that is what flooded our airwaves, and if Black music was played, we were talking about, the Supremes and the Four Tops and Smokey, and Aretha was put in there because she was born in Detroit, obviously.
Yes, of course.
But that was my introduction to Black music growing up. Oddly, my very first introduction to Nina's music directly was from the early 90s version of the Thomas Crown Affair,
Yeah.
her singing Centerman.
Yeah. Wow.
That was my first introduction. Now, getting distracted with career, moving, I moved to Washington, D.C. I mean, I had a lot going on in my own life, and Nina's work just kind of was on the peripheral until I started Horizon Music and doing my research on different people who are obviously major influencers, what I call first ladies of music, women who really set the bar and are examples for like a first chair in an orchestra, right? They set the bar and lead by example. So while I was doing my research on her, that's when I started to become intimately aware of her background, like you said, with the classical training. When she did not get into the American schools that she was probably overqualified to be in, she actually changed her name to Nina Simone from Eunice Wayman because she had to make a living. Yeah. And in order to make a living, she was playing in bars. She came from a very religious family and did not want them to know that this was the sinful way that she was paying her rent. And so that's where the name Nina Simone started coming in, so they could at least promote a name without her getting in trouble. Now, what I loved about the research that I did, and my major introduction was her autobiography, I Put a Spell on You.
Yes.
That's where I got a lot of my information and really? her personality. And I was just captivated. And every time I read the book, of course, I had her music playing in the background because to me, that's how it naturally works. Yeah. And it was, everyone might think that not getting into classical music and beginning to play in public, a lot of folk, she played a lot of folk music. Plus jazz, but she admitted in her book that she did not feel any purpose to her music until Miriam Makeba introduced her to the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And when that happened, her whole life changed.
Yeah.
And that was the gripping part for me. And suddenly it wasn't just about the piano. Suddenly it was about the message and that incredible voice and what it said about the struggles that Black Americans were going through during the 60s, 50s, 60s, et cetera.
Yes.
And it spoke to my heart, David. I mean, it really did. And especially where I think America is right now in its evolution or de-evolution, as some people might be saying. I think it's more important than ever that we hear her voice because there's so much of history repeating itself. And I think that as the voice of the civil rights movement, we need to be listening to that and learning and saying, how can we apply what we know from then to now and make sure that we take care of our people. And so it's kind of an American Gothic reckoning of sorts. And I think it's a really great time to be focused on her and her words in her life and how she impacted, especially back in those days, the men who were leading the civil rights movement. I mean, they depended on her and her energy in her music to carry them through times where people were getting lynched and tortured and beaten. And that's the power of music, and I'm so glad that we have her legacy to help us through the next phase and through the next evolution.
Yes. Well, the few things I'm going to comment on a few things that you just said, because they're very relevant to what we're talking about, especially as this is Black History Month.
Yeah.
And especially because of how she has become, like a few other people, almost larger beyond her physical incarnation than she was. Well, definitely much more omnipresent in the world now, beyond whatever she accomplished during her lifetime physically.
Yes.
Which maybe on some level she's aware of, but that's a whole nother conversation.
She is. She's very aware.
No doubt. But I want to say to you is a few things, because sometimes, history, people reinvent history, as you well know.
Yes.
For their own purposes, right? Now, here's what I want to say: a few things about what you said, because it's very relevant to Nina and what she was here for. That is, I think that's 100% correct about the fact that until she had that conversation with Miriam Makeba, and before Miriam Makeba became a very close friend of hers. Yeah, it's true to say that Nina probably, I don't know if she ever thought much about whether she could use music as a vehicle for speaking out. But as you say, she does say that that's when she saw a purpose. Because if you listen to the music before then that she was making in the 60s, early 60s, she made a lot of albums, and they were very eclectic. They were mixtures of folk songs and torch songs, and and she did have a captivated audience at the Village in New York, because she lived in New York most of the time at that time, and so people like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and the folk hippie people, Laura Nyro, all those people came to see Nina at a place called the Village Gate, because that's what she was doing. She was not doing anything that would have been considered a revolutionary, but what she was being was an artist of the first order. I mean, there was no one like her, and there still isn't. And so that moment of that conversation with Miriam Makeba, I can see how that did change her. I would say change her. She saw the opportunity. Now, let me say something, because a lot of times people, as I say, have rewritten history. Nina Simone in the 60s in America had a very, very, she was not mainstream. She was a long way from mainstream.
Right.
And even within, I would say, the Black community, people knew her, but they would not have thought of Nina as a civil rights activist at that time. Yes, she was participating, but she didn't have that, because of the kind of music she was doing. She wasn't thought of. I mean, there were photographs of her doing, and then she wasn't thought of as a a spokesperson as per se. And when she made that choice to make that the focus of a lot of her music, by songs like Mississippi Goddamn, and that album she called In Concert, the first album for Phillips, where she's talking Jim Crow, and you just really
young, gifted, and black.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little later, but the point being, by that time, by Young, Gifted, and Black, now she's not only just got a voice, but she's now becoming much more known in America. Now, while all of that's going on, people in Europe have already begun to embrace Nina and her music, and it wasn't because it was about civil rights, although that was, of course, what it was. A lot of it was about at that time, she kind of became that. But the idea that back then she was already being hailed as a civil rights activist is just not true. I mean, she did not have a mainstream audience. When I say mainstream, she didn't sell millions of records. I mean, the one thing that did make a difference in the trajectory of Nina's career, and even as a songwriter, that did change that to some degree, was when Aretha recorded Young, Gifted, and Black.
There you go.
The title of one of her albums that was a million, Aretha's having gold albums all over the place because that's what her career was about.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably for many people was the first time they ever heard the song. Because in America it was heard, but it was only heard it wasn't heard like on, I want to say it wasn't heard on pop radio for sure. And so the point I'm making is it's only now that people can see the massive contribution she made by being unrelenting in her stand. And the one word that I always think of, Thea, when I think about Nina Simone, the one thing that she passed on to me directly as a teenager was the importance of freedom.
Yes.
At all costs.
At
Beyond
all
love, beyond
costs.
sex, beyond anything else, freedom. Freedom was the thing that I learned from Nina Simone was the most precious gift one could have. And that does definitely has impacted, of course, many people since. And I tell you, it's such a joy for me to know that now she's everywhere. I
Yes.
mean, feeling good and the song "My Baby Just Cares for Me." I mean, all of those anthems and Cinnamon. I mean, these were part of her repertoire, but she could never have imagined.
No.
But here's what I want to find out because I got that part. But here's the one thing I don't know. Well, there's a lot of things I don't know about Nina's appeal. So hopefully you can assist me with understanding this. She did not have and does not have a sweet voice. It's a when I say sweet, it's not, it can be, but she doesn't sound like anybody else.
She's not a pop singer.
No. And she never wants, she simply is Nina. So what I want to know, because the kind of voice she has, is how has, as best as you can tell me, the other generations who've embraced her. I mean, I could talk to anyone in so many different countries, and I say, I say, I've worked in the world of R&B or soul music, and her name, and I might say, have you heard of Nina Simone? I mean, would not believe. Yes, you would.
Yes,
She is literally in in global culture. So what I want to know, having said all that, a big prelude to, what is it about her sound, beyond being a civil rights activist, beyond all the things that people think about, what is that has captivated generations? From what you can tell, I include you.
Yes, of course. I think for me personally, and how it resonates, it is the sincerity and depth, not just of the sound, but of the message that she conveys in her original music. People, as we know, a lot of people were afraid of her. She was a force. She spoke very directly. Like I said, she was not prone to smile unless she felt it. But there's this beautiful quote that I love about her that softens and I think comes through in her music, which is, I feel what they feel, meaning her listeners. She says, and people who listen to me know that, and it makes them feel like they're not alone. And that's powerful. That's power. That's multi-generational. That's that's baby boomer. That's Gen X. That's Gen Z. That's Gen, Y, the millennials, all of them. Yeah. Now, I think where we have a stopgap that we need to get over is that we are now living in a world of algorithms. And those algorithms they surpass some of the classics like Nina, because they're going for a very particular formula, right? And that also happens in film. Like you were talking, for instance, it's very easy for people to miss the point or create a point that really didn't exist. And I feel badly for our current generations trying to get to know her, because there was the big controversy over the 2016 biopic Nina that starred Zoe Saldana.
Mm-hmm.
And there were casting controversies. There was the storyline issue, which the reason why I had a problem with the storyline issue is because it focused on a romantic relationship with Clifton, which was completely false.
Completely false. 100%.
And
Yeah.
from what I understand, he was gay. So why was this even a storyline to begin with? And then secondly, the most important thing that she did in her life and her music was support the civil rights movement. And what happened? All of these people who see this movie completely miss the whole point of what her purpose in her career was.
Yes.
So it did no favors. Favors. Now, what I do like is that other documentaries did come out, and her daughter, I think it was Miss Kelly, said that she felt better because then they really captured the spirit of what she was doing and where she was spending her time, and her group of friends and the circle of what she was accomplishing in life. And that makes me feel better. But I really do think, here's my prediction, and I'm going to hold on to this. I really hope that college radio is going to step up and start focusing on this, because that's just about all we have left that is not controlled by corporate, oligarch, or monopolistic systems.
Yeah.
So I'm counting on our college DJs and programming directors to get out there and say, this, we can learn from this. We can be charged by this. Nina is a force to be reckoned with even today.
Yeah.
And it's and it's up to us to make sure that that legacy continues. That's my take on it.
I gotcha. Well, you know, I guess I know we could probably talk for hours, and we're not going to do that, but we can another time.
We're good.
What I was going to say is, thank you so much for really saying that in such an eloquent way. I mean, look, as we know, the one thing, a couple of things I want to say to that. Number one, it is not without note that Nina left America in 1971, originally in the wake of her divorce from her husband.
Yes.
And traveled, was a nomad. She traveled all over the place. And it was not easy to catch up with her. I sometimes knew where she was from one moment to the next. And then, of course, ultimately, she spent the last years of her life based in France. And that was not an arbitrary decision. It wasn't like an arbitrary decision. That was very much because she understood that even though she had a certain degree of fame and acclaim in America, that European audiences in particular embraced her because of her art.
Yes.
And Nina, for her, being accepted for her art, her artistry was really above everything else. And it really is notable that when she included what we would call some of those civil rights anthems in her music, performed in Europe and other parts of the world, it was, yes, of course. There was no like, oh my God, what is she saying? It's none of that. It was like, yes, this is who Nina Simone is. So it's worth noting. And I want to say this because I don't think I've ever said this publicly. If it weren't for the embrace of European audiences, and I would say British audiences in particular, because we really were the first ones who, I mean, Nina Simone had a 1 hour television special in Britain in 1969. I mean, or 68, 69, I think it was. I mean, that was unheard. You could never have gotten that in America anywhere. I mean, not even anywhere, not remotely possible.
No.
And most of the audience was white.
Amazing, right?
And the fact is, her music transcended color. And it didn't mean that she spoke any less about what she was standing for to British audiences or international audiences. So my point is, a little roundabout way of saying it, is if it wasn't for audiences outside of America, we might not be having this conversation.
We might not. And
We
not
might
only
not.
that, but, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but one of her quotes was that freedom means living without fear.
Yeah.
And there was so much fear and so much violence at the time in the
Yeah.
United States that moving to Europe
Mm.
gave her a sense of freedom because there was a
That's right.
release of a lot of fear. And who could blame her? I mean,
Right.
obviously, especially as we get older and health
Yeah.
problems, we want to feel at peace.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that she got as much of that as she could being in Europe.
Yeah.
And it was a natural progression for her. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that she was strong enough to leave a marriage that wasn't working, make
Right.
her own decisions,
Yes.
and be more in control of her life
Yeah.
as she saw fit. So I
Yes.
think
Good.
it's a
Well,
beautiful ending.
I just want to say two more things to complete the conversation on a personal note, because you did ask me what it was like when I first met her, and I gave you some insight on what that was like. So one of the very last times I met her was actually wasn't the very last, but certainly in the 90s, um, working with an organization in Philadelphia called the International Association of African American Music. Um, um, I arranged, because she happened to be doing some touring at the time in America, and it would have been I think it was 2001. I have to look up the date anyway. Um, and they had this award ceremony every year, and I told the person who was organizing it, Deanna Williams, that Nina was going to be in Philadelphia at around the same time. So we set it up so that she could get an award, and and you know I'm laughing because I remember how all the wasn't chaotic, but I mean Nina, I you just have to imagine what it was like to be around her. She just was. If you think she was a force of nature on stage or in the recording center, she was that everywhere. So
Yeah.
here we are. I go to meet her in the green room, and the first thing she says to me, she hasn't seen for years. She looks at me, she says, turns around and turns, "You've gotten fat, man." Meaning
Oh,
fat, bigger. I said, "Well, Nina." No, I didn't call her Nina in front of you. I called her, well, Dr. Simone. I mean, you haven't seen me in years. Anyway, so that was a humorous moment. And then I walked with her into the place where she was going to sit at a table and then getting this award. And when she it was just amazing. I
mm,
think Jill Scott and somebody else sang for her. I can't
mm,
remember. Sang one of her songs, and Nina. I said a few words to the gathered audience, so to speak, and Nina said, "This is the first award I've ever gotten in America."
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it really meant something to her. I mean, she was funny in something she said. And anyway, so
Mm,
the postscript is the last real conversation I had. I know I'm telling it, and
I love
I'm
it.
not ashamed to tell it, but to round up what to give you a real perspective on the entire human being, in a sense, not entire human being, but a lot of the aspects of Nina. So we're sitting in a limousine. I've just got the connection. First time I got that in the limousine in 1965, and here I'm in a limousine with Nina. Then the manager was there at the same time, guy you mentioned, Clifton Henderson, and we are going to a Japanese restaurant that has been opened, stayed open for Nina,
Oh,
right? No one
yeah.
else is there. So we're in the back of the limousine, and I take Nina's hand and I say, "Well, Nina, how are you?" Because when I'm with her in person, I could call her Nina. "I'm fine, darling," she says. And I say, "Oh, good. So I have a boyfriend. I have a boyfriend, a South African boyfriend." And I said, "Oh, really? Okay." I said, "Are you in love?" "Well, I don't know." But so we're having this little funny, she's giggling like a little schoolgirl, right?
Love
I'm
it.
thinking, yeah, I'm thinking back to when she asked me that question, back about dancing and sex. Anyway, to moving forward. So we're now in the restaurant, and Nina has a couple of bodyguards with her, and her masseuse and the manager, and she's having a good old time. Now, the one thing she was doing that didn't really work because she was on medication. She had been diagnosed as bipolar, and there were some conditions of that medication, which meant she could not also self-medicate, which means she was not supposed to drink any alcohol at all.
Right.
And but she was drinking sake in the Japanese restaurant, and Clifton kept saying to her, "Dr. Simone, please, don't tell me what to do." So they had a little disagreement, and he left, and she's sitting there drinking the sake, and I'm sitting opposite, and the people around don't know necessarily how long I've known her. And I said, so I leaned over and said, "Well, Nina. And I said, Dr. Simone. So, with the South African boyfriend, I said, do you think it's going to last? I don't know. And I can't repeat on air exactly what she said, but she says he has, and then referred to a part of his anatomy that was of interest to her.
Oh.
So Nina was very real, very, very real.
To the very end. To the very end.
And I love that some of my fondest memories of her are like that. I like the real person. And I looked at her and I said, "You're very naughty." And of course she loved that. So
of course she did.
I have treasured memories of her. I am so thrilled, Thea, and thank you so much for taking time today also, because it really does mean something to me that her music, her persona, what she stood for is still resonating with other generations and people she would never have met. And it just really lets me know that that on one level, her being here continues to have been very worthwhile. And so thank you.
Well, I thank you and appreciate that you invited me to be on your show. This is so exciting. And you are the only person I've ever met who had a relationship with Nina. And it just warms my heart. And I appreciate your stories. And it gives me hope. And it makes me happy. And and I look forward to learning more about her. And of course, getting to know you better as our soul ambassador. And if anybody wants to learn anything more about what I've written about Nina, please go to Horizon Music. And I'm going to spell it because it's unique. It's called, it's spelled HERIZON music.com. We're on Substack. And look her up on the website. And we have all kinds of fun stuff, videos, interviews, bios, etc. Would love to have you come and join us. And David, Substack connected us, and I just want to say thank you. This has just been an honor.
And I look forward to another conversation with you about the other women who have been part of my life in terms of, I wrote a book called The Soulful Divas. Which features not only Nina, but Aretha and Dion and Diana and Shaka and Patty. So maybe we can have another conversation about the women that have made an impact on you in music, particularly any of those women who have really sparked something in you. And really, I'm also interested in finding out about your own choice and what informed your choice to be so committed to empowering women in music. So that's a whole nother conversation. And then I'll be your guest.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Is that all right?
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, David. And folks, we're all signing off. And we'll see you next time with the best soul ambassador, David Nathan. Thank you.
Thea Wood, Horizon. Let me say it. Horizon Music.
Horizon Music. You got it.
All right, then. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right. I am ending.